He came to office with great hopes for America, and more than hopes like the president he had revered and once saw in person. Franklin Roosevelt, Ronald Reagan matched an optimistic temperament with bold, persistent action. President Reagan was optimistic about the great promise of economic reform. And he acted to restore the reward and spirit of enterprise. He was optimistic that a strong America could advance the peace. And he acted to build the strength that mission required. He was optimistic that liberty would thrive wherever it was planted. And he acted to defend liberty wherever it was threatened. And Ronald Reagan believed in the power of truth in the conduct of world affairs. When he saw evil camped across the horizon, he called that evil by its name. There were no doubters in the prisons and gulags, where dissidents spread the news. Tapping to each other in code what the American president had dared to say. There were no doubters in the shipyards and churches and secret labor meetings. Where brave men and women began to hear the creaking and rumbling of a collapsing empire. And there were no doubters among those who swung hammers at the hated wall. As the first and hardest blow had been struck by President Ronald Reagan. The ideology he opposed throughout his political life insisted. That history was moved by impersonal ties and unalterable fates. Ronald Reagan believed instead in the courage and triumph of free men. And we believe it, all the more, because we saw that courage in him. As he showed what a president should be, He also showed us what a man should be. Ronald Reagan carried himself, even in the most powerful office, with a decency and attention to small kindnesses that also defined a good life. He was a courtly, gentle, and considerate man, never known to slight or embarrass others. Many people across the country cherish letters he wrote in his own hand to family members on important occasions. To old friends dealing with sickness and loss, to strangers with questions about his days in Hollywood. A boy once wrote to him requesting federal assistance to help clean up his bedroom. The president replied that, unfortunately, funds are dangerously low. He continued, I'm sure your mother was fully justified in proclaiming your room a disaster. Therefore, you are in an excellent position to launch another volunteer program in our nation. Congratulations. Sure, our 40th president wore his title lightly, and it fit like a white Stetson. In the end, through his belief in our country and his love for our country. He became an enduring symbol of our country. We think of his steady stride, that tilt of a head and snap of a salute. The big screen smile, and the glint in his Irish eyes when a story came to mind. We think of a man advancing in years with the sweetness and sincerity of a scout saying the pledge. We think of that grave expression that sometimes came over his face. The seriousness of a man angered by injustice and frightened by nothing. We know, as he always said, that America's best days are ahead of us. But with Ronald Reagan's passing, some very fine days are behind us, and that is worth our tears. Americans saw death approach Ronald Reagan twice. In a moment of violence, and then in the years of departing light. He met both with courage and grace. In these trials, he showed how a man so enchanted by life can be at peace with life's end. And where does that strength come from? Where is that courage learned? It is the faith of a boy who read the Bible with his mom. It is the faith of a man lying in an operating room. Who prayed for the one who shot him before he prayed for himself. It is the faith of a man with a fearful illness, who waited on the Lord to call him home. Now, death has done all that death can do. And as Ronald Wilson Reagan goes his way, we are left with the joyful hope he shared. In his last years, he saw through a glass darkly. Now he sees his Savior face to face. And we look to that fine day when we will see him again, all weariness gone, clear of mind. Strong and sure, and smiling again, and the sorrow of his parting gone forever. May God bless Ronald Reagan, and the country he loved. George W. Bush. Faith-based initiative executive orders signing address. Deliver January 29, 2001, Dwight D. Eisenhower Executive Office Building, Washington, D.C. Good morning. Thank you all for coming. I take great joy in making this announcement. It's going to be one of the most important initiatives that my administration not only discusses, but implements. First, it's good to have so many groups represented here, religious and non-religious. Catholic, Jewish, Protestant, and Muslim, foundations and other non-profits. I want to thank you all for coming. This is a collection of some of the finest America has got to offer, people who lead with their hearts. And in turn, have changed the communities in which they live for the better. This meeting is a picture of the strength and diversity and compassion of our country. This is a diverse group, but we share things in common. We provide more than they provide, more than practical help to people in need. They touch and change hearts. And for this, America is deeply appreciative. Everyone in this room knows firsthand that there are still deep needs and real suffering in the shadow of America's affluence. Problems like addiction and abandonment and gang violence, domestic violence, mental illness, and homelessness. We are called by conscience to respond. As I said in my inaugural address, compassion is the work of a nation, not just a government. It is more than the calling of politicians, it is the calling of citizens. It is citizens who turn mean streets into good neighborhoods. It is citizens who turn cold cities into real communities. It is one of the great goals of my administration to invigorate the spirit of involvement and citizenship. We will encourage faith-based and community programs without changing their mission. We will help all in their work to change hearts while keeping a commitment to pluralism. I approach this goal with some basic principles. Government has important responsibilities for public health or public order and civil rights. Yet government will never be replaced by charities and community groups. Yet when we see social needs in America, my administration will look first to faith-based programs and community groups. Which have proven their power to save and change lives. We will not fund the religious activities of any group. But when people of faith provide social services, we will not discriminate against them. As long as there are secular alternatives, faith-based charities should be able to compete for funding on an equal basis. And in a manner that does not cause them to sacrifice their mission. And we will make sure that help goes to large organizations and to small ones as well. We value large organizations with generations of experience. We also value neighborhood healers, who have only the scars and testimony of their own experience. Tomorrow I will begin turning these principles into a legislative agenda. I will send to Congress a series of ideas and proposals. Today, I want to raise the priority and profile of these issues within my own administration. I want to ensure that faith-based and community groups will always have a place at the table in our deliberations. In a few moments, I will sign 2 executive orders. The first executive order will create a new office. Called the White House Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. The head of this office will report directly to me and be charged with important responsibilities. He will oversee our initiatives on this issue. He will make sure our government, where it works with private groups, is fair and supportive. And he will highlight groups as national models so others can learn from them. The second executive order will clear away the bureaucratic barriers in several important agencies that make private groups hesitate to work with government. It will establish centers in 5 agencies: Justice, HUD, HHS, Labor and Education to ensure greater cooperation between the government and the independent sector. These centers will report back on regulatory barriers to working with nonprofit groups. And make recommendations on how those barriers can be removed. I have put this broad effort into the hands of 2 exceptional people. First, Steve Goldsmith. Known as one of the most innovative mayors in America, who pioneered ways to promote community efforts. He will continue to advise me on these issues. And I have asked Steve to serve on the board of the Corporation for National Service. This organization has done some good work in mobilizing volunteers of all ages. I've asked Steve to report to me on how we can make the corporation do better. And to get help where it's most needed.